You know what's funny about trust? It doesn't break with a bang. Sometimes it starts with something as simple as a piece of paper falling out of a purse. I never considered myself the jealous type. Hell, after 23 years of marriage to Sarah, I thought I had this whole relationship thing figured out. We had what others called the perfect life. Our own house in the suburbs of Boston, my auto repair shop bringing in steady income, her career as a bank manager taking off. I was damn proud of her success, even when she started staying late for work meetings. "You're lucky," my friends would say. "Most wives would be spending all that money on shoes." But Sarah? She was always talking about our future, about investing in us. I believed every word. That's what makes me laugh now. Not the bitter kind of laugh, more like the one you'd hear from someone who finally got the punchline of a really long joke. That Tuesday started like any other. Sarah left for yoga, leaving her purse on the kitchen counter. I was grabbing my keys when I accidentally knocked it over. That's when I saw it. A receipt from Lorenzo's, one of those upscale Italian places downtown. No big deal, right? Except two things caught my eye. The date, last Tuesday when she said she was working late, and the bill. 2 complete dinners, 2 glasses of that fancy Barolo wine she loves. I still remember standing there, holding that small piece of paper, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just this weird, hollow feeling, like missing a step in the dark. Sarah had told me about working late that night, even sent me a text, "Don't wait up, honey. Budget meeting running long." Here's the thing about running an auto shop. You learn that small problems are usually signs of bigger ones. A weird noise in the engine? Better check it before the whole thing breaks down. This receipt? It was my weird noise. I put the receipt back exactly where it fell and fixed her purse on the counter. Then I sat down and did something I've never done in all our years together. I started thinking about every late meeting, every yoga class, every business dinner. 23 years of memories suddenly getting a different kind of focus, like adjusting a rearview mirror and seeing something that was there all along. But I wasn't about to blow up our life over one receipt. No, if there was a story here, I wanted the whole damn thing. And if Sarah was writing a different version of our life behind my back, well, I was about to become one hell of an editor. The thing about suspicion is that once it takes root, it grows like rust on an old car, slowly at first, then spreading everywhere you look. I've spent 20 years fixing cars, and I know that sometimes the only way to deal with rust is to dig deeper, find how far it goes. That's exactly what I did the next morning. While Sarah was at work, I sat in my office, staring at our joint account statement on my laptop. Funny how you can share a bank account with someone for decades and never really look at it. But now, every transaction felt like a clue in some twisted treasure hunt I never wanted to be part of. There it was, Lorenzo's, not just once, every Tuesday for the past 3 months, always around the same time, always roughly the same amount. 2 dinners, 2 drinks, like some sick romantic routine. Each entry hit me like a punch to the gut, but I kept scrolling, kept digging. "Hey, Tom, we've got a transmission issue in Bay 3. Mike, my head mechanic, called from the shop floor. "Be right there," I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. That's another thing about running a business. You learn to keep your game face on, even when everything inside is falling apart. Before closing the laptop, I noticed something else. The yoga studio she claimed to visit? No payments there, not a single one. The membership she talked about? Another lie in our carefully constructed life. I walked out to the shop floor, my mind racing between timing belts and timing lies. The transmission job was complex, just the kind of puzzle I needed. As I worked, I thought about Sarah, about how she used to bring me lunch at the shop, about how she'd laugh when I got grease on my face. When did those lunches stop? When did the lies begin? "You okay, boss?" Mike asked, watching me tighten a bolt with maybe too much force. "You seem intense today." I managed to smile. "Just focused, Mike. Sometimes you've got to take things apart completely to see what's really wrong. He nodded, not knowing I wasn't talking about the transmission anymore. I had my proof of the dinners, but this wasn't just about catching her. No, I needed to understand the whole story, and, more importantly, I needed to decide what to do with it. That night, when Sarah texted about another late meeting, I simply replied, "No problem, honey, take your time." Each word felt like acid on my keyboard. Time. Yeah, I had plenty of that now, and I was going to use it well. People say revenge is a dish best served cold. But what they don't tell you is how hard it is to keep it on ice while your whole world is burning down. I spent the next week playing detective in my own marriage. Every night I'd lie next to Sarah, listening to her breathe, wondering how many lies those breaths had carried. Sometimes she'd mumble in her sleep. Was she dreaming about him? The thought made my stomach turn. The breakthrough came when I decided to visit Lorenzo's myself. Just walked in during lunch like any other customer. The host's eyes lit up with recognition. "Good afternoon, sir. Table for two?" Actually, I was hoping to speak with Antonio, the waiter who usually works Tuesday nights. 10 minutes and a generous tip later, I had my answer. Sarah's dinner companion was the tall guy in the nice suits, always the same table, always looking cozy. Antonio even remembered their wine preference, that expensive Barolo, the same wine I'd been paying for, thinking it was for client meetings. "They seem very close," Antonio added, then caught himself. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't—" "No, please," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "Tell me everything." Back at the shop that afternoon, I couldn't focus on work. The image of Sarah and her tall guy sharing wine at their special table kept playing in my head like a bad commercial you can't skip. "You sure you should be working on that Bentley today?" Mike asked, watching me stare at the same engine part for 5 minutes straight. "Why not?" "Because you just tried to use a wrench as a screwdriver, boss." I looked down. He was right. 25 years of muscle memory, and I couldn't even remember which tool was which. That's what betrayal does to you. Messes with the basics, makes you question everything you thought you knew. But here's the thing about being a mechanic. Sometimes the best way to fix a problem isn't to attack it head on. Sometimes you need to be strategic, methodical. And as I sat there holding the wrong tool for the wrong job, a plan started forming in my mind. If Sarah wanted to play games, I'd play. But I'd play to win. And I knew exactly where to start, right back at Lorenzo's, at that special table where she thought she was safe. When you're planning to tear someone's world apart, timing is everything. I learned that from rebuilding engines. Rush the process, and everything falls apart. Take too long, and you lose your nerve. I spent 3 days watching Sarah's routine shift slightly every Tuesday. The subtle changes in her behavior were like warning lights on a dashboard. Extra time on makeup, that special perfume I bought her last Christmas, the nervous checking of her phone. "Going to be late tonight, honey," she said that morning, kissing my cheek. "Big presentation tomorrow." "No problem," I replied, wondering if she could feel my heart racing under my casual smile. "Good luck with the presentation." She had no idea that I'd already called Lorenzo's, speaking with the manager this time. I'd explained my situation, and surprisingly, he was more than understanding. "My wife did the same thing 5 years ago," he said quietly. "Table 7 every Thursday. I know how it feels." We planned it carefully. They'd get their usual table, the one by the window where Sarah probably thought she was invisible to the world. Antonio would serve them, act normal. And I'd make my entrance at exactly the right moment. That afternoon I stood in my shop's bathroom, staring at my reflection. The face looking back at me wasn't the trusting husband anymore. This was someone else. Someone who'd learned that love and hate aren't opposites, but partners in a dance of destruction. "You're leaving early today?" Mike asked, as I grabbed my jacket. "Yeah, got a dinner reservation." He must have caught something in my voice because he stopped what he was doing and really looked at me. "Tom, whatever you're about to do, make sure it's worth it." I nodded, thinking about all those Tuesday nights, all those lies, all that betrayal served with expensive wine. "Some things," I said, straightening my collar, "are worth everything." As I drove toward Lorenzo's, I felt strangely calm, maybe because for the first time in weeks I wasn't living in uncertainty anymore. The game of pretend was about to end, and I was going to make sure it ended on my terms in a way that Sarah and her mystery man would never forget. Lorenzo's looked different in the evening light. Through the window I could see couples sharing intimate moments, completely unaware that they were about to witness someone's world implode. I checked my watch, 7:45. Sarah would have arrived 15 minutes ago, right on schedule. I took a deep breath, adjusted my tie, and pushed open the door. The host's eyes met mine with subtle recognition. We'd rehearsed this moment. He knew exactly what to do. "Good evening, sir. Your table is ready." The walk through the restaurant felt like moving through molasses. Each step brought me closer to the truth I'd been dancing around for weeks. I could see Sarah's back, her blonde hair caught in the soft lighting. Across from her sat a man in an expensive suit, tall, dark-haired, probably early 40s, Kevin. Even from behind, he radiated that smug confidence of someone who thinks they're too smart to get caught. I watched them for a moment. The way Sarah leaned in when he spoke, the casual brush of their hands across the table, the intimate laughter at shared jokes. All these little moments that used to belong to me now performed for a different audience. "Would you like to be seated now, sir?" the host asked, just loud enough. Sarah's back stiffened. I saw her hand freeze halfway to her wine glass. Slowly, like someone facing their execution, she turned around. "Tom?" Her voice cracked on that single syllable. What are you doing here?" I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. "Having dinner, obviously. You know how much I love Italian food." I pulled out a chair at their table. "Mind if I join?" Kevin started to stand, but I waved him down. "Please, stay seated. I insist." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Other diners were starting to notice the tension, their own conversations dying down like birds before a storm. "Tom, I can explain," Sarah started, her face a mask of panic and guilt. "Explain?" I kept my voice calm, controlled. "Oh, there's nothing to explain. The receipts did all the explaining for you. Every Tuesday, right? Like clockwork. 2 dinners, 2 glasses of Barolo." I picked up her wine glass, studied it in the light. "You know what's funny? I always wondered why our wine bill at home got so much cheaper. Turns out you were developing your palate elsewhere." Kevin cleared his throat. "Listen, man." "No, you listen." I set the glass down with deliberate care. "For 3 months I've been paying for your romantic dinners, 3 months of lies about work meetings and yoga classes, 3 months of kissing my wife goodbye while she was heading out to meet you." Sarah's eyes were brimming with tears now. "Good. Let them fall. Let everyone see." "I have to admit you picked a nice spot." I gestured around the restaurant. "Great ambiance. Excellent service. Antonio's been particularly helpful. Haven't you, Antonio?" Our waiter appeared as if on cue, holding a bottle of wine. "The same Barolo as usual, sir?" The color drained from Sarah's face as she realized I knew everything. Every detail, every lie. "Actually," I stood up slowly, "I think they've had enough wine for one evening, but please, bring them the check, all of them, every Tuesday for the past 3 months. I made sure the manager had them ready." I looked at Kevin, then at Sarah, then at the growing audience of stunned diners around us. After all, everyone should know exactly what they're paying for. Funny how silence can be louder than screams. As I walked out of Lorenzo's, the quiet followed me like a shadow. No one spoke. No one moved. They were all frozen in their seats, witnesses to the execution of a marriage. The valet brought my car, and I could see the question in his eyes, the same look everyone gives when they watch someone else's life fall apart. That mixture of pity and relief that it's not happening to them. I drove aimlessly through Boston's night streets, the city lights blurring into streaks of color. My phone started buzzing, Sarah, of course, then texts, then more calls. I let them all go to voicemail, each missed call another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Around midnight, I found myself parked outside Mike's house. The lights were still on. He was waiting for me. He opened the door before I could knock, a bottle of whiskey in his hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, stepping aside to let me in. We sat in his garage, surrounded by old car parts and the ghosts of projects never finished. The whiskey burned, but it was better than the acid eating away at my insides. "You know what kills me?" I said, staring at the amber liquid in my glass. "Not the affair, not even the lies. It's the routine of it, every Tuesday like it was some kind of business meeting, like betrayal was just another item on her calendar." Mike nodded, letting me talk. "That's why I came here." Mike understood the value of silence, of letting an engine tell you what's wrong instead of making assumptions. "She used to bring me lunch at the shop," I continued, "every Wednesday like clockwork. Probably felt guilty about Tuesdays. God, I wonder if she went to him with my grease still on her clothes from hugging me." My phone buzzed again. Sarah's face lit up the screen, a photo from happier times, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. I turned the phone face down. "You know what's happening right now?" I asked Mike. "She's probably telling all our friends her version, how I humiliated her, how I could have handled it privately, like there's a polite way to handle finding out your whole life is a lie." "Tom," Mike's voice was careful, measured, "what's your next move?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You remember that Corvette that came in last month? The one where the owner thought changing the oil would fix everything?" "Yeah? Sometimes you have to strip everything down, remove all the parts, find every single thing that's broken before you can even think about fixing it. That's what I'm doing. Tonight was just the diagnostic test." Mike leaned back in his chair, studying me. "And what if it can't be fixed?" "Then you salvage what you can and scrap the rest." More buzzing from my phone. This time it wasn't Sarah, it was Kevin's wife. Looks like news travels fast in banking circles. I picked up. "Hello, Jessica." "Yes, I'm sure." "Every Tuesday for 3 months?" "No, I have the receipts." "Yes, I'll email them to you." I ended the call and looked at Mike. "You know what's ironic? Sarah always said I was too methodical, too focused on details. Guess those habits finally paid off." Outside, the night was getting older, and somewhere across town, Sarah was probably still sitting at that table in Lorenzo's, staring at 3 months' worth of receipts, realizing that her carefully constructed house of lies had just collapsed, and this was just the beginning. The next morning, I walked into my shop like it was any other day, except nothing was normal anymore. My phone had 37 missed calls, 62 text messages, and enough emails to crash a server. The news had spread like wildfire through our social circle. "Tom?" It was Linda, Sarah's best friend, storming through the shop entrance. "How could you humiliate her like that? In public?" I kept working on the engine in front of me, not even looking up. "Funny how you're more upset about the public humiliation than the 3 months of cheating. She made a mistake." "No." I finally turned to face her, wrench still in hand. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. 3 months of planned deception? That's a choice." Linda's face softened. "She's devastated, Tom. She's been crying all night." "Because she got caught," I cut her off, "not because she did it." As Linda left, I saw Mike shaking his head in the corner. "They're all going to come, aren't they?" "Oh, yeah," I nodded. "The whole cavalry. Just wait for it." I wasn't wrong. Throughout the day, they all showed up. Friends, family, even our pastor. Each with their own opinion, their own version of what I should have done. Some supported me. Others condemned me. but none of them had watched their life unravel receipt by receipt, lie by lie. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Kevin's wife, Jessica. "Meeting at my lawyer's office, 3 p.m., bringing everything I found. You should come." I texted back one word, address. The lawyer's office was all glass and chrome, the kind of place that screamed expensive divorces. Jessica was already there, a stack of papers in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "Bank statements," she said, pushing them toward me. "Joint accounts, credit cards, everything. They weren't just meeting at Lorenzo's." I started flipping through the pages. Hotel charges, weekend conferences that never existed, gift purchases I'd never seen. "Look at the dates," Jessica pointed. "They sync perfectly with your receipts." My hands were shaking, but my voice remained steady. "How long have you been gathering these?" "Since your little performance at Lorenzo's. I'm thorough when I'm angry." She smiled, but it was all teeth and no warmth. They thought they were so clever, the great bank executives, playing their little games. Well, now they get to learn about asset division and alimony calculations. As we sat there, planning the systematic dismantling of our marriages, I felt a strange sense of peace, not happiness. That was long gone. But the certainty that comes with finally seeing the whole picture, no matter how ugly it is. My phone buzzed again. "Sarah, please come home. We need to talk." I showed the message to Jessica, who snorted, "Let me guess. She wants to explain?" They always want to explain. "No," I replied, putting the phone away. "She wants to negotiate, but some things aren't negotiable anymore." Walking out of the lawyer's office, I called Mike. "Close up the shop for me. I've got one more stop to make." "The house?" "Yeah, time to pack up 23 years into a few boxes." "Want backup?" I looked at the setting sun, thinking about all those evenings I'd rushed home to Sarah. Some wreckages you have to face alone. Our house looked exactly the same as when I left for Lorenzo's the night before. Same warm lights in the windows, same perfectly trimmed lawn, same welcome mat that said, "Home Sweet Home," in fading letters. But everything else had changed. Sarah's car was in the driveway. Of course it was. Where else would she go? Her carefully constructed alternate life had crumbled, leaving only this shell of our marriage to return to. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the shadows move behind the curtains. She was pacing. Sarah always paced when she was preparing a speech. How many times had she rehearsed this one? How many explanations and excuses had she lined up like soldiers ready for battle? The key felt heavy in my hand as I approached the door. Funny how you can live somewhere for 2 decades and suddenly feel like an intruder in your own home. She was waiting in the living room, perched on the edge of our couch like a stranger at a funeral. Her makeup was smeared, her hair a mess, so different from the polished bank executive she played every day. "You're here," she said, her voice small and uncertain. "It's still my house." I remained standing, keeping the distance between us, at least until the lawyers figure out who gets what. "Lawyers?" She flinched at the word. "Tom, please, we don't need—" "I met with Jessica today," I cut her off. "Kevin's wife. Turns out you two weren't as careful with the paper trail as you thought. Hotels, gifts, weekend conferences. It's amazing what you can find when you start really looking." Sarah's face crumpled. It didn't start out like..." "Like what? Like a calculated betrayal? Like a systematic destruction of everything we built?" I could feel my careful control slipping. "Tell me, Sarah, on those Tuesday nights, did you ever think about the fact that I was paying for your dates? Did you and Kevin ever laugh about that over your expensive wine?" "It wasn't about you," she burst out, tears streaming down her face. I felt invisible. Kevin listened. "I listened for 23 years. The words exploded out of me. "I listened when you wanted to change careers. I listened when you needed to work late. I listened to every lie you told, believing each one because I couldn't imagine you could look me in the eye and make up stories about loving me while you were planning your next rendezvous." The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights sweeping across the room like a searchlight, illuminating the wreckage of our marriage for one brief moment. "I did love you," she whispered. "No," I said, my voice now terrifyingly calm. "You loved the life we had. You loved the security, the status, the story of us. But me? I was just the foundation you built your lies on." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the stack of receipts. Every Tuesday dinner, every hotel stay, every secret meeting documented in black and white. I dropped them on the coffee table between us. "Consider it a scrapbook of your betrayal, something to remember us by." Sarah stared at the receipts scattered across the coffee table like they were crime scene photos. In a way they were. Evidence of the murder of our marriage. "There's something you should know," she said, reaching for her phone. "Kevin's been calling nonstop. The bank. There's going to be an investigation." I laughed, a hollow sound that seemed to echo through our once warm living room. "An investigation? Into what?" "Client accounts, unauthorized access. They think someone might have reported some irregularities." The pieces clicked into place. "Jessica." Sarah's head snapped up. "You knew?" "Let's just say Kevin's wife is very thorough when she's angry. She didn't just find your little romance novel receipts. She found everything." "Tom," Sarah's voice trembled, "you don't understand. This could ruin us. Both our careers, our reputation." "Our reputation?" I cut her off, feeling a surge of something between rage and disbelief. "You're worried about reputation now, after what happened at Lorenzo's?" "That was cruel," she shot back, some of her old fire returning. "You didn't have to humiliate me in public." "Like you didn't have to fuck your coworker in private?" The words came out like venom. "You want to talk about cruel? How about making me pay for your dates? How about coming home, kissing me with the same lips that just finished lying to me?" She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. "It wasn't. I never meant to get caught," I finished for her. "Yeah, that part's pretty clear." I walked to our mantel, looking at the photos we'd collected over the years. 23 years of memories, all tainted now. Each smile in every picture felt like a lie. "You know what the worst part is?" I picked up our wedding photo. I kept thinking maybe there was something I missed, some sign, some clue that could have warned me. But there wasn't, was there? You were just that good at pretending. "I wasn't pretending." She stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I made a horrible mistake. Yes, I betrayed you, but our life together wasn't a lie. What we had was real." "Was real," I echoed, setting the photo face down, past tense, just like our marriage. Her phone buzzed again, Kevin probably panicking about his career, his marriage, his life falling apart. Good. Let him feel what it's like to watch everything crumble. "He's going to lose everything," Sarah whispered, staring at her phone. "The bank, his family." "And you're worried about him? Of course you are." I shook my head. "You know, I kept wondering why Lorenzo's, why that specific restaurant. Then I remembered. That's where we had our anniversary dinner last year. You couldn't even pick your own special place, could you? Had to taint ours." She collapsed back onto the couch, the weight of everything finally crushing her carefully maintained facade. "What do you want from me, Tom?" "What can I possibly say or do to fix this?" "Fix this?" I gestured around our living room, at the life we'd built and she'd destroyed. "You can't fix betrayal, Sarah. You can't put trust back together once it's shattered. It's like trying to unscramble an egg. Some things just don't work that way." I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "You know what's funny? All those years fixing cars, I learned that sometimes the most expensive part isn't the broken piece, it's the damage it causes to everything around it. Your little affair didn't just break us, Sarah. It broke every memory, every moment, every promise we ever made. And unlike cars, those parts, they don't come with replacements." The sound of her sobbing followed me out the door, but I didn't look back. Some crashes you just have to walk away from. I drove through the night, letting muscle memory guide me while my mind replayed every moment of the confrontation. Eventually, I found myself in the shop's parking lot. The closed sign glowed in the darkness, but I could see light in the back. Mike was still there. "Thought you might come here," he said as I walked in. He was working on an old Mustang, the radio playing softly in the background. How bad? "The bank's launching an investigation." I grabbed a wrench and joined him under the hood. Turns out Kevin wasn't just betraying his wife. Mike whistled low. "That's going to leave a mark." "Yeah, Sarah's terrified. Not about us, about her career, her reputation." I tightened a bolt with perhaps too much force. Funny how karma works sometimes. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Bank board called emergency meeting. Case suspended pending investigation. Your wife too." I showed Mike the message. He read it and nodded slowly. "You know this is going to be all over the news tomorrow, right? Bank executives suspended amid scandal." Good. The word came out harder than I intended. Let everyone see. Let them all know exactly who they really are. Another text came through, this time from Sarah. "They're suspending me. Please, I need your help. Just talk to me." I deleted the message without responding. "You remember that Chevelle that came in last month?" Mike asked, seemingly changing the subject. "The one that looked perfect on the outside but was completely rotted underneath?" "Yeah?" "That's what affairs are like. All shiny and exciting on the surface, but underneath, just rust and decay, eating away at everything solid." I put down the wrench, suddenly tired. 23 years, Mike. We had dinner together every night I wasn't working late. Went on vacations. Made plans for retirement. And the whole time— "Not the whole time," he corrected. "Just the last 3 months." "No." I shook my head. "The affair was 3 months. The betrayal? That started with the first lie. The first time she looked me in the eye and decided I didn't deserve the truth." My phone buzzed again. Linda this time. "Sarah's a mess. She's talking about leaving town. Please call her." I turned the phone off completely. "You know what's strange?" I said into the quiet shop. "I always thought if something like this happened, I'd be angry, throwing things, yelling, losing control, but I just feel empty, like someone drained all the color out of my memories." Mike closed the Mustang's hood with a solid thunk. "What's your next move?" "Jessica's lawyer is filing first thing tomorrow. I'll do the same. Then, I don't know. Start over, I guess. Build something new from the wreckage." "And Sarah?" I looked around the shop, at the tools I'd collected over decades, at the walls that had witnessed countless repairs and restorations. Some things can't be fixed, Mike. Sometimes all you can do is salvage what's worth keeping and let the rest go. Outside, the city was starting to wake up. Soon the news would break. Soon everyone would know. But for now, in the quiet of my shop, surrounded by broken things waiting to be fixed, I finally felt something close to peace. Not because I'd won, there are no winners in betrayal, but because for the first time since finding that receipt, I knew exactly where I stood. Alone, maybe. Damaged, certainly. But finally, undeniably, free. The headlines hit exactly as predicted. Banking executives suspended amid scandal. Investigation launched into possible financial misconduct. Sarah and Kevin's names were everywhere, their professional reputations crumbling as fast as their personal lives. I read the news on my phone while sitting in my lawyer's office, waiting to file the divorce papers. The secretary kept giving me sympathetic looks. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd read the morning papers. "The bank's internal investigation is going to make things interesting," my lawyer said, shuffling through documents. "Given the circumstances, we're in a strong position for the settlement." "I don't want their money," I replied, still scrolling through the headlines. "Just a clean break." "Tom," she looked at me over her reading glasses, "after 23 years, you're entitled to—" To what? A percentage of her guilt? A share of our broken promises? I put the phone down. Just make it quick and clean, like pulling off a Band-Aid. Later that day, I walked through the shop, checking on repairs, talking to customers. Normal things, regular things. Mike watched me from the corner, probably waiting for me to break down or blow up. But I felt oddly calm. A customer brought in an old Corvette, engine trouble. As I popped the hood, I caught my reflection in the polished chrome. I looked different somehow. Older, maybe. Or just changed. "You know what's crazy," I said to Mike, as we examined the engine. For weeks, I was obsessed with finding every detail, understanding every lie. But now I just want to forget the whole damn story. "Might be hard with the news coverage," he noted. I nodded at the Corvette's engine. "Like this engine here, sometimes the best fix isn't about understanding why it broke. It's about replacing what's damaged and rebuilding what's left." "And what's left?" Mike asked. I looked around my shop, at the tools I knew by heart, the work that had always made sense, the one part of my life that had remained honest and true. "Enough," I answered. "More than enough." 6 weeks after filing for divorce, I sold our house. The real estate agent was surprised when I priced it below market value, but I wanted it gone fast. Some memories you just don't need to keep. Jessica called to tell me Kevin had resigned from the bank. The investigation found irregularities in several accounts he managed. Turned out he wasn't just cheating on his wife, he'd been cooking the books too. Sarah's name was cleared of financial misconduct, but her reputation was beyond repair. "She's moving to Chicago," Linda told me during an oil change. She still brought her car to my shop, loyalty winning over friendship lines. "Fresh start," she says. "Good for her," I said, and meant it. The anger that had fueled me for so long had burnt itself out, leaving behind something that felt surprisingly like indifference. I bought a small apartment above the shop. Mike thought I was crazy, said I was turning into one of those old-school mechanics who live and breathe their work. Maybe he was right, but there was something comforting about falling asleep to the familiar smell of motor oil and waking up to the sound of early morning deliveries. One evening, I found Sarah's old receipt from Lorenzo's, still tucked in my wallet. I'd kept it all this time, like some kind of twisted souvenir. Standing in my new kitchen, looking down at that piece of paper that had started everything, I finally understood something. "You know what's weird?" I said to Mike the next day, as we worked on a transmission. "That receipt, it wasn't really about the money or even the affair. It was about seeing the truth for what it was, not what I wanted it to be." Mike nodded, handing me a wrench. "Like diagnosing an engine problem. Sometimes the real issue isn't the noise you hear, but what's causing it." "Yeah," I smiled slightly. "And sometimes the fix isn't about saving what's broken. It's about building something better in its place." I took the receipt out of my wallet and let it fall into the trash. Some evidence doesn't need to be kept forever. A year after the night at Lorenzo's, I finally went back there. Not for the memories. Those had long since lost their power to hurt. I went because they had the best carbonara in Boston, and I'd be damned if I let a bad marriage ruin good pasta. Antonio recognized me immediately. "Your usual table, sir?" "No," I smiled. "The bar is fine." As I sat there, enjoying my dinner, I thought about how life has a way of coming full circle. The divorce was finalized months ago. Sarah was building her new life in Chicago. Kevin had pleaded guilty to financial fraud and was serving time. The scandal had died down, becoming just another story people occasionally remembered over drinks. "You know what's funny?" I said to Mike later that week. "I used to think finding that receipt was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Now I realize it might have been the best." He looked up from the engine he was working on. "How do you figure?" "Because it showed me the truth, not just about Sarah, but about myself, about what I'm willing to accept in my life." I picked up a wrench, feeling its familiar weight. Some people spend their whole lives living with broken parts, too afraid to fix what's wrong. The shop had grown over the past year. I'd hired 2 new mechanics, expanded the garage. Turns out focusing on what you're good at can take you places you never expected. Last I heard, Sarah was working at a smaller bank in Chicago, starting over at entry level. She sent me an email once, an apology, an explanation, a request for forgiveness. I never replied. Some messages don't need answers. "You ever regret it?" Mike asked. "The way you handled everything?" I thought about that night at Lorenzo's, about the receipts, about the public revelation of truth. "No," I said finally, "you can't regret being honest, even when the truth hurts." I looked around my shop, my home, my work, my life. All the broken things we fixed, all the damaged parts we replaced. Sometimes the best repairs aren't about fixing what's broken, but about building something entirely new from the ground up. And that's exactly what I did.